You got the Mac and Mac guys, McMullen and McDonald. Here we are on Birds 365, and we are lucky enough to have Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus and OverTheCap.com here with us. He was supposed to be with us yesterday. No voice whatsoever, so he couldn't join us. So it
I
had to
can't
be,
wait to hear the voice.
had to be
Can't
one
wait.
of three things. No, before he says anything, I got to put this out there for him to give us the truth on. Brad Spielberger had no voice yesterday because 22 hours at a blackjack table in Vegas will do that to you. Screaming continuously at Taylor Swift, probably a bad idea. Or some idiot on the plane coming back from the Super Bowl sneezed on me and I was screwed. Which of the three is the reason you couldn't be with us yesterday?
I think it's both A and C. You can tell my voice is not 100%. I did play 22 hours a stretch, but I definitely hit the blackjack tables a good bit. And then, yeah, I think I just, I don't know. It's also Vegas. Everyone's in that big, convention center area for Radio Row. I don't know, but it wasn't from partying too hard. I wish it was. That's the thing. I wouldn't be ashamed to admit if I was, out till 4 a.m. in Vegas. That's not really what it was. But anyway, we're back. Thanks for the patience. I appreciate you guys. And my voice is almost.
It sounds
fine.
good. Sounds fine right now. And Jason Kelsey, I see a coughing there though. Jason Kelsey, I mean, he partied. He's fine, Brad. Come on, you got to suck it up.
I need to get a luchador mask. Maybe
Yeah,
that blocked out,
exactly.
blocked out the cold and flu
Save the
season,
voice, yes. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Kelsey was great with the luchador mask because he just picked it up off the floor, and Travis is like, "Well, you washed it, right? You did something." He's like, "No, I thought I'd get pink eye." So
yeah, he probably is impervious to germ. Like that's the thing too. His immune system is probably a fortress like Fort Knox because the guy is just, he's an animal. But anyway, I'm not Jason Kelsey.
Never gets hurt. Exactly right. All right, Brad, we want to have you on just because we love having you on the show and you're good every time you came on. But then the importance of a Brad Spielberger appearance grew because of this whole Hassan Reddick thing. And the Eagles released it on Super Bowl Sunday. It's like a Friday news dump. Do it on Sunday morning to the Super Bowl. Maybe nobody will notice. Yeah, you kind of notice when one of the best defensive pass rushers in the league is given permission to seek a trade. He comes out after the fact and says, well, I didn't ask for a trade. This was the Eagles' idea, not my idea. However we got there. Cap ramifications. The Eagles are looking at his number. You guys are great, you specifically, on projecting guys who hit free agency and what they'll probably get paid on the open market. You don't do it for a guy like Hassan Reddick because he's under contract, and you can't just start making stuff up when he's still under contract. But if you had to do it, what kind of number are we looking at here? If he were a free agent this year, what kind of a contract would he be looking at on the open market, in your opinion?
Yeah, we do dive into early extensions. Once I'm done with the mania that is free agency, I'll dive into some, that's more so usually like the Brandon Ayuk 5th-year option type players. But anyway, we do veterans like a Reddick as well. Yeah, I mean, look, it's a third contract for a guy that is obviously, double-digit sacks 4 years in a row. I think very importantly has played 850 snaps plus 4 years in a row. So super durable, super reliable, and obviously has been efficient and effective and productive. It's the third contract, though, for a guy that will be 30 next year. So it's about 20 million,
contract,
I
right?
think. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. Fourth contract, because he went from Arizona 1 year with Carolina, 2 years with Philadelphia. His next one will be his fourth, if that makes any difference whatsoever.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, it's a good point. It's true. More just to say it's not the first payday. Like teams are way more comfortable giving a guy his first veteran deal than they are saying, all right, this guy's made a bunch of money already, and he's obviously age is correlated to this. But you hear teams say, like, we don't love giving the third contract. It's just kind of a thing. So that being said, though, and I do think there, of course, have to be like a team fit. There are some teams that are probably going to say, look, I respect Philly and the way they made it work, but we just can't make a, 6'2", 235-pound guy. Like, that's just not what we're looking for at edge rusher. But that being said, I mean, you saw Trey Hendrickson, last offseason get that 1 year raise, essentially 1 year extension for $21 million in this upcoming season. I think he's saying, with the same treatment. Like, I outperform the contract I'm currently playing on. Hendricks' deal was almost the same thing. It was 4 years, 60 instead of 3 years, 45. He clearly outplayed it. He's been remarkably durable. He's been productive. So yeah, in that range, like if I had to project it, I would say, someone gives them, 3 years, 60 type situation And obviously the last year might be a little bit inflated, but nevertheless, he's earned a raise. I think he understands that, and I think the Eagles understand that as well, which is why they don't want to give it necessarily, and that's why they put out, we've granted him permission to seek a trade. Obviously, he's saying it didn't happen. My read of that is they're just getting out ahead of, we're not going to extend him to a number he likes. He probably doesn't want to play without an extension. So let's just get this whole thing jump started and let's get this trade market going.
Well, now I want to dig in the weeds with you a little bit, because I saw you did the story about the projected potential trades. Justin Fields, you put Hassan in there, getting a second round pick from Houston as a potential destination. But here's my question, Brad. The pre-June 1st versus post-June 1st is big here, because the Eagles take a significant dead money hit, get real little salary cap relief if they do it pre-June 1st. And that's what you want, because you want the draft pick immediately. Whereas post-June 1st, and you can't designate that for a trade, you can do it for a cut. It comes down to about $6 million in dead money, about $16 million in cap relief. That would make more sense, but then you're pushing the pick back a year and it makes it less valuable. Is there any way you can tweak that to make a trade more worthwhile earlier for the potential destination?
No. So, because the salary travels, right? So you're already getting the maximum relief insofar as all the prorated money, it's already been prorated. You can't mess with that. You can't change it. You can't tweak it. The Eagles have done some things recently with options where you can, but in this contract, you cannot. That's a whole different conversation of the inside the mind of Bryce Johnston and why they're structuring some of the contracts the way they are. But it does not apply here to Hassan Reddick, where the money that's already been prorated. It is a sunk cost. It is on the cap. So, but yeah, the salary, you are clearing a big salary. I know you said it's not a ton of relief, only about 1.2 million. That is of course true, but for Philly, I mean, that's all it takes, right? I mean, they structure their deals for a reason, where they want to maximize short-term, short area cap space, and they're okay with kind of the inflation of a salary cap dollar and pushing the hit down the line. I don't think they wait. If they get a good offer, I think they'll just go ahead and do it. But I see what you're saying. Of course, you obviously get way more relief if you wait until after June 1st.
Will it be as finite as where in the second round the draft pick comes up? Because we've had several trades, similar players, one between the Commanders and the Bears this past year, and they got the contract extension done, and it was a second round pick. People really like to parse this down to its lowest level. I take a top half of the second round pick, but a second half of the second round pick, I'd need a sweetener on the back end, the day 3 pick. Is it that easy? Is it that simple that I need pick number 56 in the draft? If there's anything after 56, I'm not trading this on Reddick. Can you actually make maneuvers like that, or it's we're trying to get too specific on it?
You certainly can try, but so I picked that late, for example, or for a reason. Excuse me. Like I did that for a reason. So when I do these trade articles, this is not A, I'm not perfect, I'm not always right, and B, this isn't trying to be shady, but it kind of is. Like for some reason, people in the content space just they don't just look at prior trades or do the research. They just throw a bunch of numbers out and say, hey, this guy's worth like a first, a third, and a fifth. And I'm like, based on what? This is based on, you mentioned Montez Sweat, Khalil Mack trade to the Chargers, not the Bears trade, the Chargers trade, the Chandler Jones trade, a long time ago from New England to Arizona. And now I'm blanking on a fourth trade where it was a veteran edge rusher, age 28 through 30, who had been a certain level of productivity. Obviously, like I said, Reddick's been very, very good. And then I still, in my mind, said, look, you talk about Khalil Mack, Chandler Jones, and, Montez Sweat. Those are guys that I think can play in any scheme. And there isn't really that concern of the player's bill. But nevertheless, it was Houston for a reason. I don't think an early second, I think, would be a slam dunk win. Like I would be like, this is Philly getting a really, really, really good value. Otherwise, I'm saying if you're thinking like a bad team, I would think it's more like, all right, we'll give you an early third, and then the sweetener comes in. So, okay, we're not going to just do a third. If you're going to give us pick 70, we also then need something else tacked on, a future fourth or whatever. But yeah, it was Houston. That wasn't a random team in the second. I think it's going to take a team that's picking the bottom 5 picks or bottom 10 picks to get a second round pick.
Do you think Hassan Reddick missed his chance when he didn't hold in last season after having going to the Super Bowl, 19 and a half sack season, clearly outperformed his contract? You mentioned Trey Hendrickson. I always bring up Daniil Hunter. He kind of held in Minnesota and got that little tiny adjustment up. You got to take advantage of your leverage when it's there. And he was fourth in Defensive Player of the Year voting. He showed up to training camp last year, Brad. He had a groin injury. We're all looking, is this a hold in? But then he showed up, and to his credit, he was a professional. But man, you got to take advantage of your leverage. I don't think he has that leverage this time.
Yeah, he definitely was better last year than this year. And obviously wrote in the article, just not even just the the traditional stats, but the underlying metrics did like him more last year as well. Better pass rush win rate, pressure rate, all of those things. I think even just against the run too, like more defensive stops. So, I mean, to a degree, yes, I see what you're saying. I do think Philly. I don't know. I wonder how that would have gone. They say we agree with you. You probably have outplayed your number, but we brought you in. You're from here. You went to Temple. You want to be in Philadelphia. You signed a 1-year flyer in Carolina. We brought you in for a bigger contract. And then, 1 year into it, you're immediately trying to re-up when we're trying to chase a ring and we're going to spend around you guys. And I think that is a big part of the buy-in in Philadelphia is like players know that and they appreciate that. Like, yeah, if I'm on, the Commanders, yeah, I'm going to ask for more money because why not? Why wouldn't I? I'm wasting my time and wasting my professional career. If you're in Philly, they say, look, yeah, we're not going to give you a little pay bump, but we're going to spend the money that would go to you to go sign a Julio, maybe not a great example, but like, just go bring in as many guys as possible and try and chase this thing. And they actually can back that up. So it's a fair point. Like you said, he has less leverage now than he did then. I still think plenty of teams around the NFL would love to pay Hassan Reddick a bigger contract than the one he's currently on.
Brad, last segment before we punch up, John gave me the numbers that you were projecting for DeAndre Swift, 3 and 18, so about $6 million per year, 6 and change. Yeah, I didn't want to hear that because I'd like to see DeAndre Swift come back to the Eagles, and I don't think there's any way in hell that the Eagles are paying a running back $6 million per. Who will? Who do you think's the team out there that DeAndre Swift could be a fit for? I personally think they're going to devalue running backs even more this year than they did last year when we had the whole Barkley and then the franchise tags and everything else. Who is going to go to that level for a DeAndre Swift that's going to mean he's out the door in Philadelphia?
Yeah, so that basically is just the Miles Sanders deal, but I didn't really inflate it, and it is technically less than the 4 years 24 because he wasn't quite as good as Sanders was. At least he was getting in the end zone and things of that nature. I agree. I mean, Philadelphia, that's what they do. They're gonna find the next DeAndre Swift. Go after a J.K. Dobbins or something, a guy coming off an injury like a Rashad Penny, and just see if they can get magic out of that player because the run scheme is so good and the blocking is so good. So. I think Baltimore is interesting. I just mentioned J.K. Dobbins. Maybe could go back there, but just has never stayed healthy. I think they want a fresh start. Gus Edwards is a pending free agent. Doesn't really have a lot of explosiveness. And then their young upshot rookie this year, Keaton Mitchell, who was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, had that really bad knee injury. If folks remember, like week 17, maybe week 18. So that one makes a lot of sense. He can catch the ball, Swift can, and is a good early down runner. I think this year he got more patient. Didn't like try to bounce every run outside or not wait for his blocks to develop, which has kind of always been an issue. I think he got better this year in that regard, and so he'd be a fit in Baltimore. And then maybe in the division, the Giants. If the Giants don't keep Saquon Barkley, you get a 3-down back, a guy that can do a lot, that is a good pass catcher in addition to everything else. So teams like that. But like you said, I don't disagree. I mean, the only reason why I think some of these running backs might do okay is because the draft class at running back is very, very poor. No one likes it. Ask any draft analyst. They say it's one of the worst running back classes in a while. Yeesh. So maybe because of that, a couple of these guys get paid just because, demand exceeds supply in this offseason.
One thing I love about what you do, Brad, is you bring some common sense into the conversation because every time we get to this point, we're about 4 weeks away from the new league year. I've already seen Eagles fans start talking, well, maybe we can get Brian Burns, maybe we can get Josh Allen. And Brad, correctly in his projection says franchise. If they can't get something done, They ain't getting to the open market is the point. And there's a bunch of players that look like they're going to be pending free agents, but they're not going to be pending free agents. So I love that you explain that, but it is, a pretty good edge rushing class that's probably going to get to the market. And Hunter, Danielle Hunter, I just talked about, is probably the first one. He's probably going to leave Minnesota, but he's going to get big money. And then you get down to that second tier. If you're looking for somebody with upside as an edge rusher, because you can't work it out with Hassan Reddick, and you want to go a little bit cheaper to build, because the Eagles got a lot of issues on defense. They got to build up their entire defense. Is there anybody you like from that projection as a cost-effective guy still has some upside?
Would still be expensive, but I mean, Bryce Huff is basically this year's version of the Hassan Reddick signing a couple of years ago. Obviously, extremely different profile, undrafted free agent, but he is your somewhat undersized elite pass rusher that has some questions against the run. But the upside potential is enormous. He's been our highest pass rush win rate guy last year, and this past season he was still top 5. So it's because he plays a lot of advantageous situations. 480 snaps this year was a career high for him. They didn't really play him, the Jets, on early downs, but the upside there as just a pure pass rusher is very, very high. I'll throw one other guy that I like a lot that I think goes back to Houston, but we'll see, is Jonathan Greenard, who dealt with injuries early in his career, but we always liked him. The underlying metrics always were a fan, particularly a stout run defender, really, really, really good against the run, and then a good pass rusher, but a guy that couldn't be a number one. You knew that. And then once you drop in a Will Anderson, add that interior, he goes out and has, 14 and a half sacks because he's a good straight line athlete. He's a smart football player. He's gap sound, assignment sound. And if there's other talent around him, he's going to make plays. And that sounds like a guy that would do well in Philadelphia with all the talent they have there. So I just think he's a guy, too, where I don't want to say we haven't seen, we're only scratching the surface because he did have a ton of sacks this year, but just a really good all-around football player. Finally stayed healthy, played 700 snaps this year, and he's got good burst. He's just maybe not the bendiest player, but I think would really, really fit in kind of this platoon approach. Philadelphia Eagles defense, again, not cheap. I have him at 3 years, $47.25 million total. But yeah, you're not breaking the bank like you would where Dylan Hunter I think is above 20 million. For example.
All right, if you subscribe to this theory, which I do, that the NFL is a copycat league, like baseball, basketball, and hockey. They're all copycat leagues. But the NFL, maybe slightly more than the others. We just had a great Super Bowl going to overtime, San Francisco and Kansas City. Either of those two teams, certainly the Chiefs more so because they ended up winning the game. Any aspect of their way of doing things, their positional usage, that will ring throughout the rest of the National Football League, because once again, the Kansas City Chiefs are the champions of football. Will there be a residual effect around the league? The teams look at what the Chiefs have done and go, yeah, we need us some of that. We got to get our hands on some of that. I know the easiest is, we could use Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, not available. Sorry about that. But anything else about the Chiefs that you think will play throughout the league this year and teams will look to try and go copycat on them?
Yeah, it's not necessarily a new idea, but I think they really have taken it to an extreme level and done a very good job. We talk a lot about using your early picks on premium positions and then trying to address the off-ball linebacker, safety, interior offensive line, what have you later on. What the Chiefs have done is just gone insane volume. They're drafting, over the last 5 years, they probably drafted 10 corners from round 4 to round 6, maybe more than that. They probably drafted a half dozen off-ball linebackers from round 2 to round 4, and that's so. Interior offensive line, you had Creed Humphrey, you had Trey Smith, you had Nick Allegretti steps up in the Super Bowl because Joe Thuney gets hurt and plays really well. So they've just gone this and Leo Chenal at linebacker was incredible in that game for them. A recent, I want to say 3rd round pick, maybe even a 2nd round pick, but that's their big thing is the platoon approach to the non-premium positions and just going not quantity over quality. It's a wrong way to put it, because they're already taking, you don't take those guys. You don't take off-ball linebackers and centers in the first round that often anyway. But it's just it enables them to we're in love with L'Jarius Sneed, and we should be. He's incredible. Travarius Ward was really, really good in Kansas City, and they let him go, and he plays for the Niners now. and L'Jarius Sneed just steps up. And then if Sneed leaves, which we'll see, I don't necessarily expect it, but they have all these young players at corner and safety like Chamari Connor and Josh Williams, and like they just continue to allow themselves to kind of churn and still be good. And again, at a certain point, you got to keep really good players, but it's because they just have so many dart throws and they're not afraid to. They'll take a corner in a draft class. They'll take fourth, fifth, sixth round, the same position, 3 picks in a row. And so, well, one of these guys is gonna be a contributor and gonna play. And it's worked at safety, off-ball linebacker, corner, even like rotational defensive line. They've done it really well. I mentioned the interior of the offensive line. They just, they understand the importance of depth and rotational pieces and kind of a way to go about it of, let's not try to shoot the moon and try to land some diamond in the rough prospect later on. Let's take good football players that will have a role. They'll play 400 snaps in a season, but we can rely on them to do a certain thing. And it's gone great for them.
I always love to talk NFC North with you a little bit, Brad, because you're a Chicago Bears guy. You work for the Vikings, so you have a good kind of feel for that division, number one. And it's always interesting because you have the 3 young general managers to me. Brad Holmes was, taking victory laps, done a tremendous job in Detroit. Ryan Poles has a chance to really turn around Chicago now. Kwesi Odofa-Manson not doing a good job in my estimation in Minnesota. So I want to talk about the general managers, your thoughts on those 3 specifically, the quarterbacks, because the Bears have a decision to make with Justin Fields. What, they're going to trade him. What do you think they're going to get for him? And how much is Kirk Cousins getting paid? And Jordan Love, where is he? We just looked at the 33rd team. They did their, for what it's worth, meaningless quarterback offseason power rankings. They already got Jordan Love at number 10. Where are you in the upside of Jordan Love? So GMs and quarterbacks.
Yeah, so it's I appreciate leaving the Packers out because they're phenomenal and Brian Gutekunst.
Well, I put Jordan in there, yeah.
Oh, true. Yeah. I guess Jordan's in there. Yeah. No. I mean, just because Gutekunst, is on an absolute heater right now the last couple of years. But yeah, I mean the Vikings look like you make an unorthodox hire, and I'm totally cool with it. And you can surround the guy with smart people. But then Ryan Grigson is basically running their draft board, and Ryan Grigson, had one of the worst runs of all time with the Colts, effectively ruined Andrew Luck's career, and like he's a big piece of their draft. And shocker, they've drafted very poorly. So, it's unfortunate. I still believe in Kwesi and what they could do, but it's not looking too great so far. And so anyway, the process I think could improve. I just don't understand why you say we're going to go a different direction. We're going to try a different thing. And then Ryan Grigson is kind of your guy. So anyway,
by the way, I love Ryan. I saw Ryan here when he's a great guy, but yeah.
He's got to be. I'm sure he's the best hang in the industry. If I had to guess, I mean, he's got to be. No one you want to get a beer with. More
big
than
guy
Ryan
too.
Grigson.
Big guy. Big Mike Rabel guy who's going to intimidate. Maybe intimidates people in the room.
Okay, too much. Yeah, I actually asked Diana Rossini about that tweet in Vegas. We were laughing,
Yeah.
but anyway, funniest tweet I've ever seen. And I guess I can't get. That's why I can't get a job.
Yeah, you're tall too. So yeah.
But no, anyway. Brad Holmes is exceptional. I mean, look, we're always going to nitpick. Like I probably wouldn't have taken, a running back in 12th overall. Obviously, Gibbs was fantastic. Had a phenomenal year. But when you get Brian Branch, Sam Laporta in the second round on top of the, Gibbs and Campbell, which weren't the greatest picks, but his process now. I mean, Penei Sewell and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I mean, just franchise cornerstone pieces. They're adding and adding and adding. Obviously, Aiden Hutchinson, he's one of the best GMs in the league. And I think they really also just understand, they've been patient. They haven't really splurged at all. I think maybe now they kind of, you pay some players internally and you go out and make some aggressive moves. But he's first rate, clearly has a phenomenal eye for talent. And that goes back to the Rams. Used to give him a ton of credit for kind of late round draft process. And that was their bread and butter for a while. So Brett Holmes, I think, is one of the better scouts in the entire NFL ecosystem. And then look, I do believe in Ryan Poles. I really, really do. I think, on the whole, you've seen a lot of good moves. I think his draft classes, have started to show a lot of promise. These young DBs that were all playing really, really good football to end this past season. Javon Dexter was taking strides. Darnell Wright, I think, is going to be a franchise cornerstone tackle for a very long time. Obviously, the DJ Moore trade is great. Yeah, there's been some bad moves. The Chase Claypool trade, he'd love to have that one back, I'm sure. But I think I think both of those guys are really, really talented and have a massive opportunity in front of them. Quarterback wise, I think Jordan Love is it's deserving that he's on a fringe top 10 quarterback. I really, really do. Over the second half of the season, he may be the best quarterback in the NFL. He really had a case from week 9, week 10 on as one of the best quarterbacks in the entire National Football League. We saw his accuracy on intermediate and deep passing go way up. We saw inside and outside of structure when pressured and when not pressured, all the different facets and components where, some of that was bad early on. He settled in, got better as the year went on. And you got to remember, every single target he threw to, every single one was either a rookie or a second-year player. So it's only going to get better from there. I think the sky is the limit. I think he could be, they're going to be a sexy like Super Bowl pick next year and all that. And I get it because I think they could be, they could make a run like that.
All right, last one for me, and combining two things we've already discussed, but comparing them to each other. Who gets more in return for a trade? The Bears for Justin Field or the Eagles for Hassan Reddick?
It's a good question. I think it'll be extremely similar. So it's a great bet, a great line to set. Yeah, I guess I can answer that one. Fields, I think, gets a second-round pick, but I do think you'll see some change thrown in as well. And maybe, like if an Atlanta steps up, you're talking pick 40 in that scenario. Pittsburgh, it sounds like they're interested, per a couple reports. I've heard that some people in the front office, do like him as well for what that's worth. So I think he'll get a second-round pick and then, throw in a fifth or a fourth or what have you. Reddick, like I said, I think it's a late 2. So I guess I'll lean Fields. But I'll tell you this, too. I look around the league and more quarterback potential openings I kind of cross off the list. Like I would have told you Raiders made sense. Now with Luke Getsy's the offensive coordinator, you cross that one off. There's a lot of that. So it's interesting. There's a lot of supply. You got Kirk Cousins, Ryan Tannehill, Baker Mayfield, yada, yada, a great draft class. The list for Fields is not as long as I think, you would want to drive that price up.
At PFF_Brad, last one from me, because I'm a Kirk Cousins guy. I have been. I think he's underrated. I think people give him way too much crap. But he's 36 years old, coming off a torn Achilles. Nobody's giving him $40 million a year, are they? Are they that desperate? Is there a team that desperate?
It's crazy because it seems like it could be that way. I have him right now at 2 years 60. I am going to raise that to about 2 years 70. I'm not going to look. I'm okay being wrong if I just don't fundamentally believe and agree with the thought process. So I could see it. I could. I just say, hey, look, point to Daniel Jones and just make that argument, and I get it. But like you said, 36 coming off a torn Achilles, and he played on deal. And yes, the quarterback market grows, but he played for less than that. The last 3 contracts he's signed now, it was like $32 million a year, 33, and then 1 year, $35 million this past season. So I like him too. He's a good quarterback. I think that is one where you would need same teams: Atlanta, Pittsburgh, maybe Las Vegas, like Denver. That thing. For me, the reason why I'm more bullish on that number getting high is you look at the list of teams that could. I mean, Minnesota obviously as well. They're not picking super high. They probably want to get a quarterback solution. There's a lot of teams that fall into that bucket.
All right, since you went with Denver, because that's so funny, things go around in a circle, because I mentioned to John yesterday, the day before, Russell Wilson to the Vikings. Not impossible. He goes, no way. They'll bring Cousins back before they'll bring in Russell Wilson. Yeah, but Russell Wilson you get for pennies on a dollar because Denver's going to have to cut him, and they're going to have to pay his salary. So there's a reason why you might take Russell Wilson over Kirk Cousins in Minnesota. Where's Russell Wilson going to end up, period?
That is the big thing, is what you just touched on, is he willing to take a pretty small deal because he'll just have offsets from Denver and no one's going to beat those offsets. That is the huge variable here. I think it's a pride thing that he would have to accept, and based on what we've heard about Russell Wilson, that may be a challenge. But if he does that, then I think his list of suitors is going to be fairly long. If you can say, look, I know he's been, hasn't been the same guy, but 1 year, $10 million for Russell Wilson. I think Minnesota, if they move on from Kirk, becomes interesting, even as a bridge to another player. I think they probably are trying to trade up from 11, but they become interesting, no question about it. I think it's an interesting thought. I mean, if he does that, it expands the list quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
landing spots for
A lot of
Russell
landing
Wilson. I take
spots.
a 1-year
Wow.
flyer on Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Or an
I
inexpensive deal.
don't know how far along you are in the draft process, Brad, but I'm a Jaden Daniels guy. Have you decided if you're a Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels guy?
Yeah, I'm a Caleb Williams guy. I like them all. I like all three. If they go 1, 2, 3, I would be like, yeah, that's probably smart. They're all, I think, have upside to be extremely really good quarterbacks in this league. I think Caleb just has, some innate abilities and spatial awareness and just things he does and sees that are just out of this world. But I do love Jaden. It's an incredible athlete, good deep ball thrower this past year. If I had to rank him, it'd be Caleb, May, Daniels, but it's no slight on any of those guys. Like I really think all three guys are worthy of top 5 picks.
We always love it when you come on with us. Glad to hear you got your voice, but you sounded perfect, by the way.
Yeah.
Whatever other interviews you got to do today will be no problems. You sounded great here with us, mostly because you know what the hell you're talking about, but your voice was fine, my friend. Thank you very much for jumping
Thanks,
in.
Brad. Appreciate it.
We will be getting you back on in about a month or so, certainly before the draft and the like. So thanks much for jumping in with us today.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Brad Spielberger, Pro Football Focus, writes for them, does great stuff for them, and also contributor for overthecap.com. All right, McDonald McMullen coming back. Only got a couple of minutes left to put a bow on the show.